The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. No individual or entity in the Philippines can procure their own COVID-19 vaccine without coursing it through the national government. That's the clarification made by vaccine czar Carlito Galvez amid criticisms that the LGUs are left to their own devices in the vaccine procurement process. The DOH, NTF, and FDA released a statement saying they appreciate the initiatives of the LGUs, but reminded everyone that it is still the national government that will process their vaccine orders. In an interview with Radyo 5, FDA Director General Eric Domingo also clarified that vaccine manufacturers cannot sell directly to the private sector without prior authorization.
Ngayon, para po gawin yon, meron lang naman kaming proseso na unang-una titingnan ng mga eksperto natin, mga doktor po natin na Pilipino, kung yung datos po na bakuna maganda naman yung kanyang safety at saka efficacy at magagamit po natin siya. At titingnan din po natin yung kalidad nun pong produkto bago po natin siya payagan for emergency use authorization dito. So yun po yung sinasabi natin na kailangan may prosesong pagdaanan. Hindi naman po pwedeng basta na-approve na ng iba, pipikit na lang tayo, tapos tatatakan na lang din po natin ng approve. Titingnan din naman po natin kung angkop siya dito sa Pilipinas.
To iron out procurement concerns, the League of Cities of the Philippines has set a meeting with the national government. League President and Bacolod City Mayor Bing Leonardia says they would like to remind the national government that not all cities are equal in terms of resources. In an interview with One News' The Chiefs, he said the government should extend assistance to those who need it the most.
The national government will play that big role of coordinating and doing the traffic for all of these vaccines. And at the same time, they have to coordinate with us if we should say yes or no to according to the circumstances that we have.
Here are other vaccine-related stories we're watching today. Baguio City is set to receive 360,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines by the third quarter of the year. In line with this, Mayor Benjamin Magalong revealed that the LGU has already arranged its cold chain facilities for the shots. Magalong noted that Baguio City is prepared to store vaccines in cold temperature up to -70 degrees Celsius. Bacolod City has also joined the roster of local governments securing COVID-19 shots from British firm AstraZeneca. Mayor Bing Leonardia revealed that the city is set to receive 650,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines. He added that Bacolod City has allocated 300 million pesos for their vaccine program. And former NTF advisor Tony Leachon slammed presidential spokesperson Harry Roque for downplaying fears over China-made vaccines. Leachon says demanding cheaper and more effective vaccines is not colonial mentality as Roque claims. He adds that critics do not want the government's vaccination plan to fail. But Leachon says they have every right to question the national government's preference for China-made vaccines.
Hindi ko maintindihan, pero noon pa man gusto na ng palas yan . Kung maalala mo, ang preference nila talagang doon sa Chinese vaccine. Perhaps because of the closer diplomatic ties natin with China, I think doon ang gagaling siya. And then nahalata ng marami nung nagpa-inject ang Presidential Security Guard dito at ang mga soldiers sila sa Sinopharm, again a Chinese vaccine. And then ang in-order nga nila, Sinovac, na hindi pa nag-a-apply ng EUA dito sa atin sa Pilipinas.
The World Health Organization is once again asking vaccine makers to provide COVID-19 shots for poor nations under the COVAX program. The WHO fears that the remaining supplies of vaccines will not be enough to inoculate medical workers from 92 lower and lower middle income nations. This as countries like China, the US, and Israel are dominating the early deliveries of shots in the initial round of the COVAX program. So far, the COVAX facility has raised $6 billion and ordered 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines and is hoping to order 1 billion more.
We expect and we have strong confidence that we should be able to be vaccinating in February in these countries, and we're doing everything possible to make sure in as many countries as possible, but we cannot do that on our own. We require the cooperation of vaccine manufacturers to prioritize deliveries to the COVAX facility.
PNP Chief Debold Sinas has ordered an investigation into possible procedural lapses in the handling of Christine Dacera's case. This comes amid criticisms that the filing of charges and the collection of forensic evidence seem to have been done haphazardly. PNP spokesperson Brandy Osana says they are willing to cooperate with the CIDG and the NBI to get to the bottom of the matter. Osana said even Sinas relied on the information given by the Makati police that this was a rape-slay case, so he repeated the same to the media.
Ang presumption po doon, isinagawa ng police yung mga nararapat na procedures upang maisagawa ang pagpa-file ng kaso sa prosecutor dahil meron po kasing inquest case sila ipinail, meaning meron po silang naaresto. At ang implication po nito, hindi naman po nila pwedeng isang tabi na within a period of 36 hours, dapat po nirelease ang suspects. So with that, yun ang naging base nila, having realized na meron na po silang mga ebidensya na nakalap at nandun na po yung pagpa-file ng kaso, they thought that this was already solved.
Acting on the orders of Sinas, the PNP kicked off a probe into these possible lapses in the Makati Police's handling of Christine Dacera's death. The Dacera family has set their sights on the medical legal officer who handled the flight attendant's body after the incident. Patricia Mangune has the report.
The PNP has initiated an internal inquiry into the possible shortcomings of Makati police officers in handling the death of flight attendant Christine Dacera. The Makati City Prosecutor's Office tossed the rape with homicide suit back to the police for further investigation. The deadline for the submission of findings is set on January 13, the same day as the start of the preliminary hearing. PNP Chief Debold Sinas says the complaint of the Dacera family on the reported mishandling of Christine's cadaver will also be part of the internal inquiry. The Dacera family wants the medical legal officer on case dismissed for gross negligence and incompetence for authorizing an embalmment before an autopsy, although Sinas says he has not received a copy of the complaint yet.
Ako wala akong natanggap na documents or anything. Kung meron man, ay pag-aralan po namin.
The CIDG has taken over as lead investigators of the Dacera case and will be supervised by the NCRPO.
As of now, we're still collating pieces of evidence, especially statements from the would-be key witnesses, and we're still awaiting for the results from the forensic science being conducted by the crime lab. All of this will be properly submitted before the fiscal during the preliminary investigation.
The NCRPO has also warned of possible charges against the management of City Garden Grand Hotel in Makati. This for failing to submit the names of persons booked in room 2207 where Dacera was seen transferred before she died. Sinas meanwhile stresses that the police have not given any special treatment to the Dacera family. He says Sharon Dacera, the victim's mother, is an AFP reservist, which explains the personnel in uniform at the burial.
Yung mother po kasi ni Christine is a reservist AEP personnel, Lieutenant Colonel. And he is friendly to both the AEP and the PNP. Marami po siyang kaibigan doon sa lugar nila. So it is just fitting siguro na siyempre kaibigan mo, pupunta ka doon.
For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
The pandemic has been extremely challenging for some more than others. Human rights lawyer and disability advocate Haben Girma tells Bloomberg Markets how the disabled community has been managing. Let's listen in.
Everyone has a different set of skills and challenges, and we need to maximize our skills and abilities. A lot of people with disabilities go through training programs to build up their skills. So, for example, blind individuals will build up Braille skills, literacy, orientation, and mobility. And once you have those skills and you have access to computers and internet, then you can use Zoom independently. Lots of blind people are using Zoom independently. There comes times when people don't have access to training or organizations don't use accessible video programs. Like they may use a different video program that is not accessible. And that's where the barriers come up.
You mentioned that a lot of people who have disabilities have underlying health needs that can make them more vulnerable to COVID. From what you've observed, are disabled people receiving the same type of medical care or assistance as non-disabled people? Do they have the same opportunities for treatment? Do they have the same access to the vaccine if they wanted it?
There are still a lot of people in the medical field, doctors, other medical professionals, who believe disabled lives are not worth living. I've had so many people tell me, oh, I could never have your life. If I were blind, I'd take my life. And it's awful and terrible to hear that. And when that comes up in the medical field, it's devastating. So we've seen this coming up in the pandemic especially, and disabled people being put last in line to receive medical care, or doctors choosing not to provide medical care because they assume wrongly, based on ableism, that disabled lives are not valuable. Our lives are valuable. Ableism is the widespread assumption that disabled people are inferior. We have talents, we have skills. When organizations do the work of removing ableism, then they can benefit from the talents of over 1 billion disabled people around the world.
And that's when disabled people can thrive. I want to end on a positive note as we look forward. Have there been any developments or societal adjustments as a result of this pandemic that have been positive and should be carried forward once we get to the other side of this pandemic?
A lot of disabled people were asking for the flexibility to be able to work from home. And for a long time, organizations would say, no, it can't be done. Well, now we've seen in the pandemic, it absolutely can be done. And when the pandemic is over, I hope many organizations will continue to offer this flexibility to work from home and attend conferences remotely.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 1 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We are One News.